مرحبا وأهلا بكم في برنامج داخل واشنطن. معكم مضيفكم روبرت ساتلوف. كثيرا ما ينظر إلى الانتخابات الرئاسية الأميركية من خلال عدسات الشخصيات، وهذا ليس أمرا مفاجئا بالنظر إلى الشخصيات المدهشة التي تضمها لائحة الاقتراع هذا العام، من اشتراكي كبير السن إلا سيدة أولى سابقة إلا ملياردير اشتهر بتقديم برنامج واقعي على شاشات التلفزيون. ولكن فيما وراء الشخصيات توجد بعض القضايا الحقيقية في الحملة، والقضايا محل النزاع الأكبر تشمل الهجرة والتجارة الحرة وعدم المساواة ودار القوى الأمريكية في العالم. انتخاباتنا لن تختار رئيسا فقط، وإنما ستقدم إجابات على أسئلة حول هذه القضايا المهمة سيكون لها أثر كبير على الشؤون السياسية في الداخل وعلى الصعيد الدولي لأعوام كثيرة قادمة. هذا الأسبوع في برنامج داخل واشنطن سنناقش الرابطة بين القضايا والشخصيات في حملة انتخاباتنا الرئاسية مع اللجنة التي تضم خبيرينا السياسيين نورمان أورنستين وماري سي كيرتس. Welcome back to Dakhel, Washington. I'm sitting with our panel of political experts, Mary C. Curtis and Norman Ornstein. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Glad to be with you.
Thank you.
So far, over the course of this campaign, we've spoken a lot about fascinating personalities. There's a rich subject line here. But today, let's focus on some of the issues that are animating the debates within the two parties. Norm, let's just begin. Among the Republicans, which of the domestic political issues seems to have had the most impact in this campaign?
I think there's no question on the Republican side it's immigration. Donald Trump was a sideshow for the first few months that he was a candidate in this race until he seized on the immigration issue and got to the right of everybody else, which was not an easy thing to do. But by saying there are Mexican rapists coming into the country and we need to build a wall and we need to eject all of those who are here, he resonated with a large group of voters, in part because it's not just immigration per se. It's a catch-all for a lot of the anxieties that people feel with a stagnant economy and a country that is becoming a majority-minority one. Trump played to those anxieties, and the other candidates have been trying to catch up.
Now, Mary, often Republicans are associated with certain social issues. Have they played a big role in this campaign, or is it this heavy focus on immigration?
Well, I agree. Immigration has been the focus, and some of the issues that you've seen in the past, such as abortion and same-sex marriage and those issues, have not played as large a role. And Donald Trump, the front runner, folks have tried to attack him by saying, well, he said things in the past, nice things about Planned Parenthood, for instance. And that hasn't hurt him because that is really not their focus. And those attacks have not worked.
So why do you think that social issues have taken a back seat in this campaign to immigration or perhaps other economic issues?
Well, because that's not folks' priority right now. They're thinking jobs, the economy, competition. And as Norm said, it focuses on anxiety about so many other issues. And when they see the country changing, and also they hear about some of the terrorist attacks, and so it makes them anxious about the other as well. Who's coming into our country? Are we checking them out? And those issues will take a front seat.
You know, it's interesting to reinforce what Mary said. Evangelical voters, who are a large part of the Republican base, have gone very significantly for Donald Trump, which you never would have expected. There were other candidates in the race who had a more direct appeal to evangelicals. Ben Carson for one, Ted Cruz for another. Trump is somebody for whom religion has been a casual thing. He even, when he tried to make a reference to the Bible, got it wrong, botched it. But they're going for Trump because those issues that used to dominate for them, they're still there, but the anxiety is much, much greater. And I do think it's, as much as anything, an anxiety over the sense that their primacy in the country is being challenged as we move to a majority-minority country. So Trump's slogan, "Take our country back," you ask yourself, take it back from whom? That is something that really resonates with people, along with a frustration that their own leaders have seduced and abandoned them, failed in their promise that they would bring Barack Obama to his knees and reverse all of his policies. And Trump says, "I'm tough, you don't have to worry about me."
And it is the toughness that even the evangelicals do, it appeals to them. But the whole "Make America Great Again," it can also have a backlash, because there are so many people for whom they do not want to go back because it wasn't so great for them. And they see opportunities, which is why you see in the polls that many minorities, Hispanics, African Americans, when they talk about optimism and how is America doing, their optimism level is so much higher. Because even though if you look at the numbers, they're lower and they're higher for unemployment and things like this, but they feel they're on an upward trajectory. And other folks who are, they look back and see, parents in the union, these kinds of things, and they say, oh, well, maybe it was better then. But it is, as I said, there are large groups of people, and they may not have been as vocal, but you won't see those folks at the Trump rally saying, "Take America back," or "Make it great again," because they see optimism, and they see President Obama's presidency as progress. Mm-hmm. And so it's a totally different way of looking at the country, and you wonder if these divisions will be healed, because we are one country. But nobody is putting that message out right now.
So if anxiety is driving the domestic political debate, what are the international or foreign policy issues that have risen to the top? I mean, two come to mind to me: terrorism and trade. How did these emerge as the most important issues in the Republican debate?
Well, it's interesting, because the Republican Party has traditionally been very much a free trade party, to take that issue first. Donald Trump is basically saying, I want to trash all these trade deals. Not saying I don't want any trade deals, but basically saying we have stupid people making these deals, we're being built, China is raping us, and we need to get back, and I can make better deals. But it's very much a dissonant message for what the Republican Party has been in the past. The other candidates have mostly been silent on that front, in part because none of them wants to say a good word about Barack Obama. So endorsing a trade deal like the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, that he engineered would not be in their interest necessarily. It's also a part of the deeper populism that always emerges when you have tough economic times, and always brings a protectionism with it. Now, along with that is the fear of terrorist attacks, which certainly was heightened after the ISIS attack in Paris. In the United States, a lot of people felt that they were unprepared. The attack in San Bernardino, California intensified that. And this widespread sense that Barack Obama has been feckless and weak is something that has played out over and over again with Republican candidates and in their debates. And it's been basically who's going to be tougher against those terrorists. That's the competition out there, and that's also where Trump, by basically personifying the tough guy, and once again getting to the right of his other candidates in terms of how he would deal with Muslims more generally, has managed to gain more traction.
Yes, you've seen so many folks, working class people in these Midwestern states. Actually, Donald Trump has had appeal all over the country. And there has been a betrayal, I think, that they have felt, that they have been voting for Republicans, and they've been making these deals, and the jobs have been leaving them. And they have not been able to get these kinds of jobs, these manufacturing kinds of jobs. Whole cities have been affected, all the businesses in those cities. So when Trump says things that make orthodox and establishment Republicans aghast about trade and free trade, and it is against what they've been doing and saying, but it sounds really good to the folks at the rallies and the people who are voting for Trump. So there is that true disconnect. And you hear also in the debates, as Norm said, all the Republican candidates honing in on our country isn't respected. Obama is not respected. At the same time, they are also talking about putting boots on the ground and putting troops out there. And it makes you wonder if when they actually get down to it, if the American people are really going to be for that as well. But so far, the rhetoric is about who can be the toughest, and Obama is not tough enough.
I did just want to ask both of you about trade for a second, because there's this very strange phenomenon where the front runners in both Republican and Democratic parties are opposed to the major trade agreements that we're negotiating. Is this the first time in memory that we'll have both parties coming out against free trade?
It is, as a matter of fact. And of course, Hillary Clinton waited a while before announcing her opposition, and I think it's a recognition of the phenomenon that Mary was talking about, that especially in the Midwest, the unions, which are a dwindling force in the society but still a strong force in the Democratic Party, have been very much opposed to all of these trade agreements. Bernie Sanders, who's challenging Hillary Clinton, has voted against every trade agreement and is particularly vocal on this one, and has basically said, even though Hillary Clinton is now opposed to this one, her husband negotiated NAFTA, for example, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and she had supported that, and she came very late to opposition to this one. And that made a difference in primaries in the Midwestern states, starting with Michigan, where Clinton's big lead disappeared, and the trade issue was a pivotal one.
Yeah, I think you look at that and she says, wow, there are all these states like the Michigans, the Iowas, the Wisconsins that have been solidly Democratic in the presidential races, and this might bring them into play. And so you see that she has these associations that she cannot want to run away from. Bill Clinton first as her husband, and she was former First Lady there, and Barack Obama because she was in the Obama administration. And so she has a tightrope she's walking to try to come out and say, yes, I did support them, and I was supportive of the Obama administration, which a lot of his constituency wants to hear her say, but at the same time, I disapprove of these deals. And it's going to be difficult for her, but she is looking ahead and thinking, wow, these are some issues that can really have resonance in states where Democrats have really taken for granted.
Okay, when we come back after the break, we're going to talk about some of the issues other than trade that are animating the Democratic debate, and we'll see how legislators around the country who are also on the ballot in November might be affected by all the politics in our discussion in just a moment. Our panel includes Norman Ornstein. Norm is a resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, an election analyst for CBS News, and a contributor to the National Journal and Atlantic Magazine. Sitting to his left is Mary C. Curtis. Mary is the political editor at Roll Call, the newspaper of Capitol Hill. An award-winning journalist and teacher, she has served as national correspondent for AOL's Politics Daily, a contributor to the Washington Post's She the People blog, and a Nieman Fellow at Harvard University. Previously, Mary worked as an editor at the New York Times and the Charlotte Observer. So, Mary, let's start with you. What are the domestic political issues that are animating the Democratic debate?
Well, sometimes when you look at the Democrats debating and the Republicans debating, you think that basically they're in different worlds. Because some of the issues that come up are just totally opposite. You hear at the Democratic debate income inequality and the inequality in our society, how the 1% has so much and the 99% they do not have as much. And the same way as many of the Republican candidates have been going to the right, you see that Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernard Sanders of Vermont, the independent, has been forcing Hillary Clinton to go somewhat to the left on these issues. You will hear talk about Flint and how government... Flint, Michigan, and the water crisis there, and how government not working well is the problem. So the Republicans, while they talk about government as the problem, the Democrats are talking more about we need government that works well and works for the people. You also will hear the issue of trade as well. And you'll hear issues of race and policing come up. When it comes up among the Republicans' debate, they'll basically say the police need our support. When you hear it come up at the Democratic debate, they will say, you know, we need accountability, that everyone, not just the citizens, but police need to be accountable. So some of the issues touch on one another, as in trade. Other times they're totally different issues, and the discussions veer off in totally different directions.
Okay. Norm, is there an issue that has emerged that's a bit of a surprise to you that you didn't expect to be on the agenda?
If there's anything that's been a surprise, it really is the degree to which Bernie Sanders has been able to turn this focus against the billionaire class and put Clinton on the defensive. And he's done that less by focusing on the issue and more by tying her to big interests. And that includes the fact that Clinton has given large numbers of speeches to Wall Street firms and made very, very large sums of money. The question of whether she will release the transcript of those speeches, while he has focused on the small donors that he's gotten. That's an issue, and it's an issue of whether big money dominates and influences everything. That has been a sharper one than I think we would have imagined it would be otherwise. The other issue that's come up quite a lot on the Democratic side and hardly at all on the Republican side is climate change. Both Clinton and Sanders, not surprisingly, see this as a transcendent problem, an existential crisis for the planet, believe that action needs to be taken and done more broadly. And on the Republican side, not a single candidate sees it as a significant problem. Occasionally you'll have somebody, Marco Rubio in the most recent debate, acknowledge that there was climate change, but basically said there's always been climate change and dismisses it as any kind of a problem. That's a big dividing line between the parties, and we get a lot of discussion of it in the dialogue and in the debates.
And the balance, Mary, in your view, between economic bread and butter issues on the one hand and social issues for the Democrats, which has emerged more as the energetic aspect of the debate?
I would say the bread and butter issues right now, because it's the primaries. I do think as it pivots to the general, if indeed Hillary Clinton is the candidate, you'll hear a lot more about women's right to choose and abortion and availability of abortion, Planned Parenthood, these sorts of issues. You might hear more about those issues as it pivots to the general. Right now, you aren't hearing as much about them, and a lot of it is with between the two Democrats. They're in agreement on so many of these issues about same-sex marriage, women's rights, minimum wage, and these issues.
There's another factor here, Rob, that's going to have a big impact on this election, which was unexpected, and that is the death of Justice Antonin Scalia in the Supreme Court. A court that's been divided in a very partisan way, 5-4, for a whole lot of pivotal decisions, including on issues like same-sex marriage and abortion, but on voting rights, on campaign finance, for example. Now, normally you head into a presidential campaign and you always hear talk about how the most important thing in terms of the election is who gets to choose Supreme Court justices, because the court has become so important. But it's theoretical. You don't have a vacancy. Now you have a vacancy. The Republicans in the Senate have vowed not even to consider a nomination made by President Obama, to wait for the outcome of the election. And that will make it a major campaign issue, and that will turn some of that focus back to those social issues.
Yeah, the very point of whether or not he can appoint a Supreme Court justice will be an election issue. You see folks, he is going to name someone, and it will probably be someone that is pretty moderate, and so the fact that they are not being even considered, the woman or man is not even being considered, is going to be an issue in and of itself, because it's very easy to say we won't consider anyone, but when it's actually a human being, it's going to be a lot more of a dramatic issue of whether this person will or will not. And it'll also play, I think, into energizing the base of both parties, the basis of both parties, because on the Republican side, they will want that, it wasn't just a Supreme Court justice, it was Antonin Scalia, the icon of many conservatives. And for the minorities and folks who really, the Democrats need to come out to vote, part of it is, wow, another issue that they're disrespecting President Obama. They're not letting him do his job. And so it'll be a real issue on both bases.
And it allows us to pivot to the other elections that are taking place. The Senate is at stake, and it's the Senate that confirms a justice. Republicans have a 4-vote majority in the Senate. They have 54. They have 24 of their seats up to only 10 for the Democrats, many of them in blue or Democratic states. The other day, Ron Johnson, a Republican who's in trouble in Wisconsin, acknowledged that if a Republican president had been in place, of course they would have considered and confirmed a justice. It's only because it's Barack Obama. So this becomes an issue that affects not just the presidential campaign, but potentially who controls the Senate.
Fascinating internal debate among the Republicans. Thank you so much, Mary C. Curtis. Thank you so much, Norm Ornstein. Look forward to having you back because these stories are not going away.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. To be continued.
بهذا نصل إلى نهاية هذه الحلقة من برنامج داخل واشنطن. إذا كانت لديكم أي استفسارات أو تعليقات حول هذه الحلقة وخاصة حول القضايا التي تؤثر على بلدكم، أرجو أن تراسلوني مباشرة على عنوان البريد الإلكتروني التالي insidewashington@alhurra.com. معكم روبرت ساتلوف. شكرا لكم وإلى اللقاء.